Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hey, hello, back in the saddle again in the new year. Happy New Year to all you. Hope you had a good holiday season, but it's behind us. We're slogging into yet another new year. And, of course, the old Chinese curse always pops up in my head. May you live in interesting times. And certainly we do. So, welcome to another, who knows what, wild ride, I'm sure. And let's try this year to have a little more fun than we did last year. Let's try and watch. I'll go immediately into some kind of like bummer subject, but let's try. Indeed. Miracles can happen. The Steelers are in the playoffs. There you go. Oh, jeez. So, I'm trying to think. I mean, I haven't been here in almost 2 weeks, and I guess stuff has been going on. I've tried mightily not to pay much attention. I have not seen a local or network newscast, and I'm sure I'm the better for it. However, it might mean that I'm not up to speed on what is being purveyed as the news of the day these days. You know, if you only read newspapers or read magazine articles, you don't necessarily get the same news menu as does somebody who would watch local television news and watch national television news. And so I often find myself, I'll hear people talking about something, I'll say, what are you talking? And I'm out of it. Because a story that maybe has played large in the broadcast news didn't even show up in print. So I'm unaware of it. And that's just further evidence of this sort of fracturing of any communal news source, which at least kept the nation and the populace on somewhat the same page. And God knows we are all atomized, living in our own little universes, and it ain't good, clearly. I mean, it's just not good. But what the heck? It's what we got, and we're going to have to deal with it. Can I start with an obit? It doesn't seem like a good idea, but scientists, I'll get it out. Scientists and medical folks and others, sociologists, psychologists, do not have an answer to why there is a clear spike in death in the week before Christmas and all the way to January 1. It's a death season. I'm telling you, more people die. It is verifiable. You can look at the obits. You can ask any funeral director. There's a spike. So it's not like people hanging on for the holidays. No, because they're often dying during the holidays. But I bring it up because one of the folks who died during the holidays is a guy who I think was just an astonishing chronicler of human experience. And he was a videographer. He was a cinematographer. He was a documentarian. And I just want to give him his due. And I'm sure it would be very difficult to be a person who hadn't encountered his work. His name is Haskell Wexler. It's not a name that I think a lot of people necessarily know. But he, well, let me just do a few of the movies he did so you'll understand when I say he was huge. He was the cinematographer on Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, for which he got an Academy Award. Bound for Glory, also, which was the Woody Guthrie biopic, and that was an excellent movie as well. And Wexler, actually knew Woody Guthrie, the real Woody Guthrie, because he served with him in the Merchant Marine during World War II. But what I thank Haskell Wexler for are his more political documentaries and movies. He worked with director John Sayles a lot, and the two of them put together so much wonderful stuff. If you have never seen a movie called Matewan, which was made in 1987, Matewan, it's about West Virginia coal miners. And it's about a strike there. And oh my God, it's mind-blowing. Even more mind-blowing is another film he did called Medium Cool. This was done in 1968. He had an idea. He wrote the screenplay, and it was not a documentary. He wrote a screenplay to be shot during the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 1968, that iconic Democratic Convention in Chicago where there was blood in the streets, and chaos in the convention center. And Wexler, being smart about politics, he looked ahead and he thought, I bet all hell's going to break loose in Chicago when the Democrats meet. So he wrote a script about a photographer who was there to cover the convention. Now, he, of course, couldn't have known, as he's writing the script, focusing on this photographer who, in the movie, has a political awakening covering the convention. He couldn't have known all hell was going to break loose. But all hell did. And so in the middle of him filming this fiction about a photographer, the riots happened around him and just took his film to a whole other level. So Medium Cool, if you've never seen it, it is part fiction, part reality. It's in a genre all its own. He's quoted as saying, I knew something was going to happen, but the script just had said that there was a demonstration and they arrested some hippies. That's what he envisioned. He said, I had no idea about the scope of it. Now, this stars an actor named Robert Forster. And I got to tell you, please. Now, Wexler was a lefty himself, and he said that he just knew. He said, I just figured something's going to happen. It was just bigger than I'd thought. It wasn't that Abby Hoffman called me up and said, hey, look, we're going to do this. No, it just happened. I think everybody knew. I was in Chicago in '68, and it was quite clear. There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. there's a man with a gun over there. I remember taking the L to see my great aunt, who lived off of Michigan Avenue, fancy schmancy area. I get off the L, and as I'm walking toward Michigan Avenue, I see a sight that chilled my blood. Truly. It was one of those times when, you realize that a phrase, chilled my blood, comes from an actual physical reaction that your body has to an event or instance. Chilled my blood. Because what I saw on Michigan Avenue, where Saks and all these fancy schmancy stores were and all the people went shopping, were tanks. Military tanks with barbed wire mounted on the front and soldiers in uniform with guns. And I thought, this is my country? I had never seen anything like it. This is the United States? It looked like some totalitarian, behind the Iron Curtain kind of a country. I was beyond terrified. It was quite clear there's something happening here. It was quite clear that all hell was going to break loose. But Wexler, well before it, seeing that and figuring out how to make a movie in the midst of that chaos. Medium cool. He had wanted to make a film about a guy behind a camera going out and being challenged by his interaction with the world, and where he had previously been merely an observer behind his camera, he's pulled in to the reality of it. Medium cool. I recommend it. For a cinematographer, he had a weird affliction. He was colorblind. Go figure. Like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, for which he won an Academy Award, is in black and white. But he was fully capable of doing color. He did the Vietnam movie Coming Home. He did In the Heat of the Night, great movie. Great movie. He did... He actually shot One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But guess what happened? He was tossed off that film set 2 weeks before they wrapped. He said, I was devastated. I mean, there's only about a minute or 2 minutes in that film that I didn't shoot. But he was knocked off because a documentary which he had done called Underground, about the Weather Underground, a radical leftist domestic terrorist outfit from the left at the time, who were all fugitives. They were underground. He knew where they were. He did a whole documentary on them, and that was enough. It was considered an outrage that he knew where they were, didn't tell the authorities, in fact, does a documentary which some felt, elevated them in some manner. And so Milos Forman, who was the director of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, said, you're out of here. I don't need this in my film. So the cinematography did get nominated for an Academy Award, and his name was on it, but so was the guy who did the last 2 weeks of filming. I mean, that he became a leftist is no surprise. He was born in Chicago in 1922, and his parents were both lefties. So that when the astonishing, I never know how to characterize Paul Robeson, political activist, singer, opera singer, actor, extraordinary man. When Paul Robeson came to town, he stayed at our house. We had civil rights discussions. And he said his parents were always involved with this stuff. So World War II comes, and as I said, he's in the Merchant Marine with Woody Guthrie. And the ship he was on was sunk by German torpedoes. And he's in the water in a lifeboat with 20 other terrified guys. And the U-boat that sunk him starts to surface. And they figure we're dead. They're just going to machine gun us. And instead what happened is the captain of the U-boat lifted a small movie camera up and started taking shots of what he had wrought. As Wexler put it, documenting his kill. So, yeah, the U-boat commander comes up and starts shooting, but not shooting at the surviving merchant marine who are desperately, huddling in their lifeboats, those who made it to the lifeboats. And all Haskell Wexler remembers is as he's sitting there watching this and cowering and thinking, I'm about to die again. I thought I was going to die 10 minutes ago. Now I'm going to die for sure. But then he sees the captain with a camera, not a gun, shooting. And he said, I was just wondering, I wonder if he's shooting in color or black and white. Something that struck me as so weird. You're out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You're almost dead. Your boat's been shot out from under you. And your picture's being taken by the guy who tried to kill you. Anyway, I want to say I think he was so amazing. And if you are looking for anything ever to do, just check out his, I check out Matewan if you haven't seen that. Check out any John Sayles movie. The two of them did so much amazing work together. Haskell Wexler, ladies and gentlemen, no longer with us. What an amazing character. 93 years old. And a body of work that is mind-blowing. Chuck writes, Lynn, you were praising newspapers earlier in the show, and I, like you, prefer the in-depth reporting that a newspaper provides. That said, over the holidays, I was sorry to get a letter from the Tribune Review saying that my house was no longer in their delivery footprint. And as of January 1, they would not be delivering the paper to my house anymore. I live in Allegheny County, just 6 miles from downtown. We're just a one-paper household now, and that's not a good start. Yeah, well, the newspapers are going down. It's so clear. There ain't going to be newspapers delivered to anybody's door soon enough. I mean, or you're going to pay unbelievable amounts of money for the privilege. I mean, that's just the way it is. Ain't happening. I saw that a number of local newspapers also closed down. I thought maybe we were going to talk about that. I think there was a paper in McKeesport that's over 100 years old. It's gone. And these are all like Tribune Review, I think, owned. They're just divesting left and right. Now that Richard Mellon Scaife is no longer there to take his children's money and bail out all these newspapers, I don't know. It's just not. And, and I look at the paltry Post-Gazette and I just want to scream. It's just awful. Even the front page today. Was it the front page? Or maybe the front page of the sports section? I don't know. It was a picture of Antonio Brown trying to do a sort of Lambo leap into after he scored a touchdown yesterday in Cleveland. But there were, of course, Steeler fans right there where he got the touchdown. And so he ran and tried to, jump up. He didn't quite get all the way, but they're all, patting him and he's talking to them. And it was a cute moment. So there's a still in the Post-Gazette somewhere today of that sweet little celebratory moment. But the caption, and I remember I read it and I thought, no, that's not right. The caption said, it's not a big deal, but there's always, you start seeing these kinds of mistakes all the time. The caption said something like, Antonio Brown celebrates with Steeler fans after the Steelers won the blah, 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 blah. Well, no, that is not what that picture is. Yes, he's celebrating, but the game was very much contested at that point. They weren't celebrating a win. They were celebrating a touchdown. And I thought, back in the day, that wouldn't have happened. I don't know who's right. It's like, and a lot, how many people reading that caption would have said the same thing I did? That's not right. A paper loses credibility when increasingly you're going through it and saying, that's not right. And I find myself doing that a lot with the Post-Gazette, and I feel bad about it because obviously I know a lot of people over there, and I know that there's a lot of good, smart journalists over there. But operating on a shoestring, guys. A shoestring. All right. Oh, no, that's not. God, what is that? Okay. So, do we want to get into this Oregon thing? I got to say something. I have not seen any television coverage, so I don't know. Are they really on it a lot? I don't know. And I suppose if they are, they're not calling these guys terrorists, are they? Or are they calling them traitors or seditionists, or are they? No. Because I got to tell you, let's say you had a grievance with the federal government, and who doesn't? And you decided you were going to take over some federal property. Well, you could take the Washington Monument. You could take, there's tons of acreage in the country that is owned by us all. That's the government, owned by us all. Apparently, the way this is being reported, these friggin' traitors, is it's played down so that one network called it an expression of anti-government sentiment. And as Esquire magazine says, and I'm sorry I don't know who wrote it, I just know Esquire published it, this ain't an expression of anti-government sentiment. Flipping off the governor as he drives by, that's an expression of anti-government sentiment. What some of these right-wing conservative talk show hosts do every day is an expression of anti-government sentiment. And that's cool. That's the First Amendment in action. That's what the Founding Fathers had in mind. Another network called it, I believe this is ABC, said that these guys were staging an occupation following a peaceful protest. And Esquire says, what? No, I'll tell you who was doing an occupation after a peaceful protest. That would be all those folks who got bludgeoned and pepper sprayed at Zuccotti Park a couple of years back. We are the 99%. These are men with guns who have taken over something that belongs to you and me, that belongs to all of us. And they have clearly declared themselves outside the law. And we know where these guys are coming from. There's a lot of people who are sympathetic to them in this country. But you know where it leads? It leads to the broken shell of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. That's the same mindset. These total radical Americans who believe they are above the law, who believe the government is a tyranny, and who have taken up arms, excuse me, am I correct or not, who have taken up arms against it, the government. Isn't that the definition of sedition? Isn't that the definition of traitorous activity? You have taken property that belongs to us all. You are armed, and you are taking on the duly elected government of the United States. And look at the kid gloves with which we handle these guys. We don't call them what they are. The news media don't call them what they are. The government sits on its hands. And I understand that, fearful of, you want another Waco? I mean, it's in terms of, nobody cares about this wilderness little building they took over, really. But it is the point of the thing. Do you think a lot of armed black people, black guys, taking over, I don't know, name another place, even some place like that, would they be treated with kid gloves like this? You tell me. So let me just share this last little tirade from whoever this guy is who wrote this for Esquire. For all these people who think that they are tyrannized by the government of the United States, there is no actual tyranny in this country against which to take up arms. There is bureaucratic inertia, there is pig-headed bureaucracy, there even is political chicanery, but there's no actual tyranny. There's no tyranny in the Endangered Species Act, or in the Bureau of Land Management, or in the Environmental Protection Agency, or in the Affordable Care Act, or in IRS dumbassery, or even in whatever it is that the president plans to say about guns this week. Anyone who argues that actual tyranny exists is a dangerous charlatan who should be mocked from the public square. Anyone who argues that there is out of political ambition or for their own personal profit should be shunned by decent people. It does us no good to ignore what is going on in this obscure little corner of the Pacific Northwest. It does us no good to refuse to hold to account the politics that have led to this and the politicians who have sought to profit from it. It does us no good to deny that there is a substantial constituency in this country for armed sedition against this country. And the first step to taking it on is to face it and call it what it is. It is not an occupation after a peaceful protest. It is sedition.
It's Charlie Pierce.
What?
Charlie Pierce.
Oh, is that Charlie Pierce? Figures. Figures. It's Charlie Pierce and Esquire. Yeah. Wowee. So, I was thinking of, these guys think they're tyrannized in America. You want tyranny? There are so many countries that show us what tyranny is. And it ain't the United States of America. I mean, all government to a certain extent seems tyrannical by virtue of the fact that it holds power. But tyranny? I was reading an article yesterday that I could not finish because I couldn't bear it anymore. I was reading about what happens to people who live in countries in which tyranny truly exists. I was reading about unbelievably courageous men and women who, on the internet, take on the Muslim fundamentalists. They too are Muslims. We're always saying, are we not, we Americans, in our comfort, where are all the good Muslims? If that's not indicative of what really Muslims are, why aren't they standing up against them? Hello? They are. And you know what happens to them? They're killed. And their friends are killed. They run for their lives. I'm looking at a picture of a man whose face was just slashed. And what was his crime? His crime was doing what we Americans do every day of our lives, and never think for a moment that, somebody have a problem with it? Fuck you. He was speaking his mind. And to speak your mind in so many countries gets you killed. Your family killed. Your friends rounded up and disappeared. I was reading about a publishing house in Hong Kong today. 4 members of this publishing house have literally vanished in the last few weeks. They just, poof, have disappeared. Now, it just so happens this publishing house publishes books that can be slightly critical of the Chinese government. Now, see, in this country, you write something about our government, you don't disappear. You don't get murdered. You don't get your face slashed to smithereens. You don't have your family kidnapped. I mean, to suggest that we live in a tyranny is ridiculous. We live in an imperfect country, that's for sure. But you want tyranny, I got a one-way ticket to about 150 countries I'll give you. And if that's what you need to understand what tyranny is. Why don't they stand up and take these guys on? Well, these guys I was reading about do. there's still others that have picked up and do. Can you imagine the courage? If you live in a country in which there is no protection whatsoever for your freedom to speak, to express yourself, would you be so willing to spout off in a country where your spouting off can result in your death? We don't live with that fear here. This is no tyranny. It's a lot of things, but it ain't no tyranny. And to allow these jerks some measure of respect somehow. And there is respect in this country for the guys with the guns. There's a huge swath of America who's behind them because they feel tyrannized. What a bunch of idiots. What a bunch of spoiled jerk Americans who need to get out of the country a little bit and see the rest of the world. You want tyranny? We'll show you some tyranny. See how brave you are living in a country like that. See if you're going to be macho like you are here. It's easy to be macho here. Because there is no tyranny. Another thing I saw over the last few weeks is, one of the head of ISIS, this al-Baghdadi jerk, came out with some kind of a audio recording, again, exhorting people to join the fight. And all of this is on Twitter. It's right out there. Come on, guys, come and join us. Decapitate, crucify, stone, mutilate, murder, pillage. Join us in our grand, grand conquest. And there's a Muslim guy who's living now in Norway because, like so many, he fled the tyranny and went to a place where he could express himself. He started a whole bunch of other Muslims all over the world who are responding to al-Baghdadi. Did you know that was happening? And they're just ridiculing him. These are Muslims who are ridiculing these jerks, so that we keep hearing, oh, ISIS uses the internet so masterfully. They're constantly, enticing our kids. They're coming into on their internet. Well, it turns out, the internet works both ways. And so this guy up in Norway said, hey, let's respond to al-Baghdadi. By the way, the guy in Norway's name is al-Baghdadi too. No relation. And so he and a whole mess of others responded to ISIS's website or their Twitter hashtag or whatever the hell it is, saying things like this. Aw, geez, too busy being part of a civilized and functioning society. Somebody else wrote, sorry, I gotta see the new season of Sherlock. Sorry, but I'm watching Star Wars. Maybe tomorrow. And they just keep just sort of ridiculing. No, we're living lives here. We got things to do. And just showing disdain and mockery. I love it. So you can say, yeah, so what? Well, it floods their intake. It does waste their time, and it probably pisses them off. So It's a little something. But easy for us to say, take them on. And then you read what happens to the people who do. And the guys I was reading about yesterday weren't taking on ISIS. They were just taking on, like, Sunni fundamentalists. I mean, it could be these guys were in Bangladesh. Beyond belief. There is no protection for them at all. It's easy to be courageous and gutsy and take on the government when that government is the United States of America. Try taking on these people in so much of the world where there is genuine tyranny. Just saying. So all these people with their guns in America because they think they're going to protect themselves, they just drive me nuts. Here's one of the latest that I saw. So a woman goes and gets herself a gun so that she can be safe from al-Baghdadi. She lives in Florida, like he's going to come to her house, whatever. She's going to keep herself from, large black men trying to rape her or whatever. Who knows what fantasies these people live with. So, lo and behold, she hears somebody coming into her house in the wee small hours of the night. She grabs her gun and thanks God for her gun and thanks God for the Second Amendment, and she blows away that form of a person she sees in her hallway. It was her 27-year-old daughter. That's what happens when people have guns in their house. You get a gun in your house because you're scared in the first place. Then you shoot your daughter because you're scared. And you're not functioning rationally ever. I'm just saying. We keep saying, fine, get yourself a gun, and you know what's going to happen? Someone in your house is going to get killed by it. Now, I wonder, that woman, how does she protect herself from what she's done now? God, people. Speaking of guns, and I guess the president's going to do that on Thursday. He's talking to the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, today about what he can do without necessarily having to involve the dysfunctional Congress of the United States. And he'll speak on Thursday about, I guess, in some town hall, although whatever it is he's going to do will be leaked before that, I'm sure. So, speaking of guns as well, the Washington Post decided to do what cannot be done because the NRA, through legislation passed by their lapdogs called the U.S. Congress, does not allow any of our federal, doesn't allow the NIH, doesn't allow the FBI, doesn't allow any of these people to sort of compile statistics on guns and deaths. It's amazing. I mean, it's just amazing. So the Washington Post went to work with a whole bunch of investigative staff, and they tried to figure it all out. And they found that close to 1,000 times in the last year, an American police officer has shot and killed a civilian. Okay. And then they tried to break it down. And here's what they found. Although black men make up only 6% of the American population, they account for 40% of the unarmed men shot to death by police this year. Try to let that sink in. Unarmed black men who are no longer here, killed by officers of the law who are there to serve and protect. Black men, 40% of those killed were black men, unarmed black men, even though they make up 6% of the population. There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there. A hugely disproportionate number of those killed, 3 in 5, were not exhibiting threatening behavior, but they were black or brown. The FBI actually is charged with did you hear something? What happened? Oh, okay. The FBI is charged with keeping statistics on shootings, but the Washington Post found that the FBI data showed that most of the police departments in this country never report any of their incidents to the agency. So it's not like the FBI goes banging on their door and saying, hey, we need to know how many people have been shot. They don't even, it's useless. Useless. We got a call. Hello.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey, when I think of these people with the guns, I think of just the word wimps.
I think so, too.
And, nothing would delight me more is the military just to come in there and take them down and just cap. They can't do that. But just say, see, you want to screw around and think you protect yourself? We'll see how tough you are. Just really give it to them. But
you can see why that's not the smart thing to do, and yet what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, you got to wait it out, I guess. But it's just wimps. If you're so tough, you wouldn't need a gun. If you're so big and bad, you wouldn't need a gun. That's why I look at it.
Well, they are wimps.
Yeah, they all are.
I agree.
And I have nothing against people that hunt and all that, but this stuff of walking there with guns and all this ammunition, like you're just going to take look at the Hells Angels. They got a lot of guns, but they take them out. They've taken them out many times.
Yeah, and that's why I say, why aren't American blacks starting to, because you can carry now openly? Black America needs to start openly carrying.
Yeah.
Do you not think that would change people's perception of open carry? When these jerks are thinking about open carry, they're thinking of white guys like themselves. They aren't thinking of black guys. Of course, if a black guy openly carries, he'll get shot to death.
And just like you said, if those people were black, they would be a different story.
Oh, yeah.
Guaranteed it. It would be a different story.
God almighty.
And one other thing. Pennsylvania is the least charitable. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. Oh, dear.
So
what did it? What do you mean?
As far as giving, around Christmas. And
it said that Pennsylvanians are the least charitable?
That's what I read. Or one of the words. We're in the top list, I guess.
All right, good for us. We got ours.
We're
Screw
number
you.
one.
Yeah, we're number one.
Okay.
All right, goodbye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Bye.
We're number one. We're number one. Also, a lot of the people that the police have shot over the last year, they're mentally ill. And so when a cop starts screaming, drop that knife or drop that whatever it is you have, mentally ill people, and they say this, if you talk to somebody who's not quite right in the head and there's police screaming at them, that doesn't help. They, in fact, panic. They do the opposite. They don't know what the hell to do. And the price they pay for their mental illness, even though they're not really a threat, is you get killed. Alex was reminding me, Celine is in India. We've got Alex here at the helm, reminding me of the difference in how the police handled, is it Dylan Root? Roof. I keep saying. He's the jerk, scrawny white kid who killed all those marvelous black people in the church, right? He massacred a bunch of people. Was he hurt in any way? No. In fact, Alex was telling me the cops, when they arrested him, took him to Burger King. Fed him. But if you're a black guy who hasn't killed anybody, and you're acting a little strange, or you have anything in your hand, God forbid, you're as good as dead. It's amazing. It really is amazing. Hey, I want to thank Robert Hester for telling me something I did not know. And that is, Lynn, he writes, I don't know if you're aware of this fact. Blissfully out of it, Robert. But I'd like to congratulate you on starting your 35th year in Pittsburgh broadcasting. That is right. When you said it, I thought, oh my God! I started in my broadcast career in Pittsburgh in January of 1981. And folks, if you do the math, that's 35 years. I don't know. I'll be too embarrassed to read what you wrote here. Proud to say that I literally grew up with you from your humble beginnings with your best friend, Sally Wiggin, at WTAE in the 80s and early 90s to your days where you joined one of the greatest talk show lineups ever in Pittsburgh or American radio history, to your days when I was reintroduced to you via C-SPAN in 2004 during the presidential election, to your short cup of coffee stint at Whammo in 2009. I'm glad somebody's keeping track of my life because it's all to the position you're at now at Pittsburgh City Paper. I hope sometime this year the city of Pittsburgh does something with you that they did with your best friend, Sally. Acknowledge your 35 years in Pittsburgh. Nah. You truly deserve the right to be given it. The fact that, like Miss Wiggin, a person like you in the profession you've had for such a long storied period, have hung around this region while others have told Pittsburgh the same thing that Ice Cube said in Friday. Bye, Felicia. That whole, I don't know from Ice Cube in Friday. I hope you don't buy Felicia anytime soon because we need your voice to get us through these tough times. I'm not praying that you'll be around for another 35 years, but I am praying that you'll be around long enough to see all the things you've prophesized over the last few decades, like peace and... I prophesized peace in the Middle East. No, I didn't. I ain't that crazy. Hillary becoming president, more police officers held accountable, more gun laws put into action, and less righties polluting our AM airwaves. Like most or all of your listeners and watchers, and yourself perhaps, I can't wait to see what your 35th year in Pittsburgh is going to look and sound like. Well, how sweet. Thank you, Robert. I don't know. Well, here it starts. Blah, 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 blah. My son, who always makes fun of my voice, he does imitations of me that sound like, oh, God. I mean, they just sound like, oh, God. Like, he said last night, if you could have any other voice, whose would you want? And you know who I picked? Scarlett Johansson. That's a good voice, right? But could that voice do this show? I guess it could. I think my voice, the fact of what I did for a living, has created this voice. I don't think I used to sound like this, particularly. Because as I grew up, I don't remember my mother saying, be quiet. And in the last 30 years, my mother often says to me, be quiet. Like I'm way too loud. And I think it must be that doing this for a living has really impacted what my voice is. And the voice is, I mean, it's a living thing. It's sometimes out of control, and it's not the voice I had for much of my life. It's something that I think invented here on the radio. I mean, it's partially my voice, but now I don't know the difference, and so I do sound like this all the time. God. See what happens? Thank you, John. 35. Jesus. Well, I want to say I did have opportunities to say goodbye and leave, as did Sally. And Pittsburgh Pittsburgh is, it's like mold. It grows on you. Hello?
Good morning, Lynn. It's Dave from Washington.
Dave from Washington. Hello.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, who knew?
I have said this to you many times over the years. It's too late now because two of them are gone. But you, Sophie Maslow, and Myron Cope should have recorded an album of Christmas carols.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
It would have been a bestseller.
I don't know. They could use it. Remember when they tortured Manuel Noriega with rock music blasting at his? I mean, the CIA could use it instead of waterboarding.
I think it'd be excellent. I'd play it every year.
I once said I was the love child of Sophie Maslow and Myron Cope.
Oh God.
Well, but that explains things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I mean. A nice
horrible image, but yeah. Okay, well, I got to go. I just wanted to wish you Happy New Year and Happy Anniversary and all that.
Thank you.
All right,
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Happy New Year. Okay. Oh, I got other stuff here, but I don't wanna. We just got 2 minutes left. I'm not gonna do it. I would just rush it, and this way I can save it for our show tomorrow, and that'll be fun. Have you seen any good movies? I'll tell you which ones I've seen that I do recommend. Star Wars. The Big Short. Oh, I want to see that. Yeah, that's good. That's very good and educational. And that it sort of helps explain what the hell happened in 2008 with Wall Street. It reminds you of what happened, and you leave there. It's funny, as I walked out of the theater, the guy who's always at the theater who takes tickets, he looked at me and he said, and yes, another angry person exits the theater after... And I said, oh, I look mad? He said, God. He said, looks like you could kill somebody, because you walk out of that movie thinking, "Wow!" And another one, which is similar in that it's what I would call an ensemble cast of really good actors doing something about a real event. So you learn stuff and you're entertained and you see great acting and all that stuff. The other one is, I only think it's on one screen right now. I'm not sure. This is called Spotlight, and it's the story of how an investigative unit at the Boston Globe finally blew the pedophilia and the Catholic Church thing out of the water and took down cardinal law, and it's fascinating. It reminded me sort of All the President's Men, which showed you how a newspaper investigating, All the President's Men being about Watergate, showing how a newspaper who's not quite, they think they got a big story, but they have to prove it. So they operate as essentially, investigators. So it's got that kind of a feel, and it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. So I even watched that one from the first row of the theater, which I never do. Oh, is that awful? But that was the only seat. I watched the whole thing like that. And good God, Mark Ruffalo's nose was like, before me, was like 6 feet. It's just unbelievable. It was a little daunting, but the fact that I still loved it. And Pittsburgh's own Michael Keaton is just fantastic in it. So, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. And I don't know what else. I think I don't know. So anyway, Concussion, go see it. It's not a great movie, but Pittsburghers should really see it since it's so much about us. So much about us, and then about football. Peter writes, I'm a silent listener of your show. Hi. I enjoy it pretty much. Pretty much? Congratulations on your professional anniversary. Please take care of that wonderful voice. All right, sure. I will. And all the best for a new year, Peter. Thank you, and all the best to you, and Happy New Year to us all. God help us. We got nothing we can do. We're in for another year. Oi, oi. Let's do it together. I'll see you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.